All right, I got a question for everybody. You ever been like in the shower or at picnics or down on 3rd Street looking for that good? You ever been like just in a deep state of mind to where you're constantly contemplating something like, are the archangels actually planets? You ever just stop in the middle of traffic and start thinking about this deep subject that I know we always all think about? No? No? Well, I'm not crazy, alright? So hold on. Before you stop this and you go start looking at porn again, hold on. Give me a second. Really quick, for all of you atheists that are about to turn this off, hold on. This is not religious. This has nothing to do with God. So don't worry about it. You don't have to feel dirty listening to this. You'll probably still feel dirty listening to this, but you don't have to feel like religious dirty. All right. And then for you religious people, no, this doesn't have anything to do with God, but it does have something to do with the Bible. So, there's something for you in it as well. Either way, it exists for both sides, and both sides should pay attention to it. So basically, neither side is being attacked. So don't worry about any of that. There's no ulterior motives here. But this is, oddly enough, a legit question. Are the archangels in the Bible planets? Now, you've probably never thought about this before, but there's actually a whole lot of merit to this. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to read what Velikovsky says about it. He brings it up and he supports his point of view with evidence. And then what we'll do is we'll factor in electric universe stuff after we're done dealing with Velikovsky to maybe come out to an answer of, yeah, possibly the archangels were actually planets, that these things were legitimately seen at some point in time in history. A side question that we can also ask is, why does this matter? Who cares? Like, why does it even matter that we figure this out? Well, here's the point, because while the Bible is a whole other subject to discuss, and, I get it, everybody has their opinions on it, but at the end of the day, regardless, the Bible does have stories that were transmitted throughout history, and their stories do corroborate and correlate with other ancient texts from around the world, which means that we can use other texts as evidence to kind of try to put together a better picture of what happened in our ancient past, and that's what we're trying to do. All right, so this is what Velikovsky proposes. The archangels. In the scriptures, the destruction of the army of Sennacherib is said to have been caused by a blast, and a few verses later is said to have been the act of an angel of God. The Talmudic and Midrashic sources, which relate that the army of Sennacherib was destroyed by a blast and scourge accompanied by a terrible din on the night following the day when the shadow of the sun returned 10 degrees, are more specific. The scourge was inflicted by the archangel Gabriel in the guise of a column of fire. In the present research, it has been established that it was the work of Mars. So basically, in Worlds in Collision, Velikovsky is saying that Mars is the Mars cataclysm is what took out Sennacherib's army. But obviously, the Bible does not say the planet Mars. But what they do say is the archangel Gabriel. He goes on. Are archangels planets? An old tradition dating back to Gaonic times had it that there are 7 archangels, each of whom is associated with a planet. The 7 archangels were believed to play an important part of the universal order through their association with the planets and the constellations. There is some variation in the different versions in the angels assigned to the planets. In some medieval writings, Gabriel is associated with the moon, but in 1 or 2 with Mars. The following, however, makes the identification of Gabriel possible. Gabriel is connected with the foundation of Rome. The Jewish legend says that when Solomon took the daughter of Pharaoh to wife, the archangel Gabriel descended from heaven and inserted a reed into the sea. About this reed, more and more earth was gradually deposited, and on the day which Jeroboam erected the golden calves, a little hut was built on the island. This was the first dwelling place of Rome. Here Gabriel is cast in the role the Romans ascribed to Mars, that of the founder of Rome. Our assumption that it was the planet Mars which caused the destruction of the army of Sennacherib in the spring of -687 is implied also by the rabbinical sources. Since the Archangel Gabriel is another name for the planet Mars, the ancient Jews knew the origin of the blast and the identity of the angel of the Lord, who destroyed the Assyrian army. Gabriel is the angel appointed over fire. He is also, according to Origen, the angel of war. Thus, we again recognize him in Mars Nergal. The rabbinical tradition says that the Assyrians of the host of Sennacherib, before they died, were permitted by Gabriel to hear the Song of the Celestials, which can be interpreted as the sound caused by a close approach of the planet. The words of Isaiah 33:3, "At the noise of the tumult, the people fled," should, according to the Jewish tradition as related by Jerome, refer to Gabriel, Hammon being another of his names. The planet Mars is red, and Madim, the red one who reddens, is the name for Mars in the Hebrew astronomical texts. One text says, "The Holy One created Mars, Madim, that he should throw the nations down into hell." A few rabbinical sources attribute the destruction of Sennacherib's army to the action of the Archangel Michael. Some ascribe it to both archangels. Who then is Michael? So we will be covering basically Gabriel and Michael. Now, at this point in time, what he's got going here is that Mars is Gabriel. So we have the cataclysms that Mars caused were that this was during the period of the Trojan War. This would have been one of the things that Mayans are afflicted by later on. Everybody's afflicted by Mars, but that's why this is important to read, because what we find is we find the destructions by these close calls with these various planets all over the place, including the Holy Bible and all these religious texts. You know, it's a Jewish thing as well. It's all over the place. All right, let's get back. Let's go back to Michael. The entire story of the Exodus is connected with the Archangel Michael. In Exodus 14:19, the pillar of fire and cloud is called Angel of God. According to the Midrash, it was the Archangel Michael who made himself a wall of fire between the Israelites and the Egyptians. Michael is said to have been made of fire. The Haggadah states, Michael was appointed high priest of the celestial sanctuary at the same time that Aaron was made high priest of Israel. That is, in the time of the Exodus, Michael was also the angel who appeared to Joshua, son of Nun. The celestial struggle at the Sea of Passage is depicted in the familiar image of the Archangel Michael slaying the dragon. Michael produces fire by touching the earth, and it is the emanation of this archangel that was seen in the burning bush. He has his abode in heaven and is the forerunner of Shekinah, or God's presence. But as Lucifer, Michael falls from heaven and his hands are bound by God. All these attributes and acts of the Archangel Michael lead us to recognize which planet he represents. It is Venus. The Archangel Michael, or the planet Venus, and the Archangel Gabriel, or the planet Mars, saved the people of Israel on two dramatic occasions. At the Sea of Passage, when the hosts of Egypt, pursuing the fleeing slaves, could be seen in the distance, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. The sea was torn apart, and the slaves walked on the bottom of the sea and reached the other shore. Their enemies were thrown high by the released tides, which fell down when a spark passed between Venus and the earth. 800 years passed after the Exodus. The Assyrian hosts, which a generation earlier had removed the 10 tribes of Israel to an exile from which they never returned, invaded Judea with the express purpose of crushing rebellious Judah and removing him from the homeland and from the scene of history. A blast from Mars fell upon the camp of the Assyrians and annihilated it. Those rabbinical sources which ascribed this act to both archangels were not wrong. Venus pushed Mars toward the earth, and thus both were instrumental in the destruction. The author of the apocryphal book of the Assumption of Moses knew that Venus and Mars are each as large as the whole earth. How about that? Nobody ever talks about that. Because of their intervention at moments when the national existence of Israel was at stake, Michael and Gabriel were looked upon as guardian angels of the eternal people. Gabriel is the Hebrew Hercules, or Heracles. Actually, the classic authors made it clear that Hercules is another name for the planet Mars. In the Gospel of Luke, Gabriel is the angel of Annunciation to the Virgin. In the Roman Catholic Church, Michael is the conqueror of Satan. He'd the host of heaven and first of the saints after Mary. That's the section that Velikovsky goes over when he talks about the possibility of Venus and Mars being the archangels that you read about in the Bible. Now, one of the things that we have a problem with in ancient history, let's talk about this first, would be that we find a lot of names being confused between like a human type of person and a planet or a star, right? We constantly see, planets named after what is essentially a person, and then we have that person also essentially doing human deeds. So we see a lot of these mix-ups throughout history. So one of the things that Velikovsky is pointing out here, when he's talking about Gabriel and Michael, he's talking about the two of the main cataclysms that we know hit Earth. The first one would be the Venus cataclysm. The Venus cataclysm is what the Exodus is talking about. But that Venus cataclysm is also talked about in all of the ancient cultures as well. Here we're focused more on the Abrahamic religion, as Velikovsky is more into that as it is. But his books obviously go into all of the other histories as well, which corroborate all of the stuff that happened relative to the Exodus event. Now, his books, once again, are more Abrahamic in nature, but that does not mean that they are not useful when you apply these to other cultures. That's the point. So what we have here is we have the Bible, even in its current form, being used, even then talking about the cataclysms that were going on back in the past. The problem is that they are using names which we are not familiar with when we discuss planets, or these kinds of things have been mixed up within all of our histories. Once again, we have planets are named after planets and people, and then there's stories that switch between the personification of a planet and an actual person and their deeds. The other cataclysm that he covers is the cataclysm of Mars. So Venus happens around the 1500s-ish BC, and then we have the Mars cataclysm, several of them, happening between 600 and 700-ish BC. And the Mars cataclysm can also be corroborated with in tons of ancient text, as well as all kinds of physical and geological evidence all over the planet. I won't get into all of that right now. So the main point is when we read old scriptures and old texts, such as what we find in the Bible, if you're an atheist, I know it can be difficult to overcome the whole ego thing, but what I would say is overcome your ego and realize that there's a whole other way to look at those stories, because whether you like it or not, those stories are legitimately some sort of history. There is historical value there, right? So don't put off the Bible, is what I hate to say it, or any other religious text. Don't do that. Because while on the surface, it may seem very much a religious situation, and I know you don't hold that view, and that's okay, but what I would say is you as a person, try to grow and try to raise yourself up to where you're able to look at a piece of work, not get instantly offended by it or not have your programming kick in to where instantly you discard something. Stop yourself, ask questions, start using critical thinking to see if you can actually extrapolate and pull stuff out of that work. Now, for you guys who are into the Christian, Judeo-Christian or all of the Abrahamic religion type of stuff, what I would say to you guys is enjoy your religion. That's fine. But what you can do though is your scriptures have a lot more in them, and your preacher is probably not bringing this stuff up to you in any way, shape, or form. That's not bad at all. It's not bad. It is what it is. But what you need to be doing is take another look at all of this stuff that they're saying and take it not as a fantastical type of story. Take it as truth and ask yourself, if these kinds of events happened, so for example, let's take the Exodus. This will be a perfect example. What would it take, the Exodus, right? So the sea splits open. Okay, great, and you run across the sea and we get away from Pharaoh. What would it take to legitimately pull apart a sea? And I mean this literally, because they don't say it was like a tsunami where things kind of rolled away. No, they say the sea was parted. Now, we also have plenty of other cultures talking about this exact event happening to their ancestors as well. So what would it take to pull the sea apart? To pull apart water like that, if we were to introduce electromagnetism being powered by a planet passing by, there you go. We can do all kinds of crazy things like that, and suddenly all of the physics makes sense. Suddenly that event of the sea being parted, suddenly that's not an impossibility, and in fact, you would expect it to happen. That's important. So basically what we're seeing is we are seeing true ancient accounts of what happened in our ancient history. It's just being told through texts and other means that maybe don't necessarily come off as the real events as the real events should be told. And that's a problem, right? Because one of the other issues that we find after cataclysms happen is that the cataclysms are absolutely amazing. If Mars or Venus was doing a flyby of Earth, you would get the fear of God put straight into your bones, I promise you. And I don't mean like not even necessarily you're praying to God, but you would feel humble. When you saw a planet screaming by your planet, things change. But as amazing as that is, all it does, it just takes a few generations to lose that fear, to lose that understanding. And that is exactly what has happened today, right? So in all of our religions, for example, the religions are now very much taken as metaphorical. Well, science can't really prove a lot of this stuff. So if you try to figure out the Dead Sea, they part the sea, science offers a few things like maybe a tsunami. There's not really a whole lot. Science doesn't offer a whole lot in this regard. So you religious people make the mistake of going with mainstream science. Stop right there. Go look at the electric universe. We now know for a fact that we can do this kind of stuff with electromagnetism. What drives this event? Well, the archangels drove this event. What are the archangels? The archangels are planets. The reason why I'm making this video right now is because I wanted a foundation for the next video I'm about to release that will come right after this one. I'm very, very curious to see if anybody else has any insight into this next thing that I'll be putting in there. So if you're done with this one, go check out the next video, because now you'll have a foundation to maybe take more seriously my question in the next video.